It started like a game show, that's what. Made it worse. No warning, no threat, no negotiation. One moment everyone was just living, shopping, cooking, driving, arguing about nothing, and then the skies went black, every screen lit up at once, phones, TVs, billboards, even the damn fridges with smart displays. One massive feed hijacked by something that wasn't from Earth, the video showed. Cities, hours, Tokyo, Johannesburg, lows. Angels, Moscow, silent, frozen, then a countdown from 10. Nobody understood what they were watching until it hit 0, and then they screamed. Buildings collapsed in sync like a coordinated demolition. Entire blocks were swallowed by white-hot beams from orbit. Mothers tried to shield children. Buses exploded in intersections. Highways split open like paper. And the feed didn't cut. It stayed on every second, not a second spared. Blood in 8K resolution. Screams echoed with surround sound. It wasn't war, it was a message. The aliens didn't even introduce themselves, didn't bother explaining. They didn't care if we knew who they were. They wanted us to feel helpless, to watch it happen, to hear the crying. 7 million dead in under 9 minutes, and they broadcasted every second like a damn flex across our planet and across their empire. They thought we'd break the moment it ended. The screens flickered to a single symbol, unfamiliar, sharp, jagged, like it was meant to cut your mind just looking at it. Then silence, no demands, no invasion, just absence, like we were too small to follow up on. They left us with our dead. That was their first mistake. The United Governments fell into chaos. Presidents cried on live TV. World leaders offered surrender to a force that had already left. Some called it a religious reckoning. Others said we provoked them by broadcasting our tech into space for decades. The truth, no one knew and no one cared, but a few of us. We didn't cry, we didn't pray, we didn't try to explain it away. We just counted the dead. I was one of them. My wife and son were in Nairobi. That city took the first beam. I never even heard their last words, just their final GPS ping before it went dark. I watched the recording of the explosion more times than I can admit. Slowed it down, paused it, zoomed in. I don't even know why. Maybe to make it real, maybe to hold on to their last second on Earth. That's when the black files started circulating. Footage, logs, signal patterns, stuff the governments tried to bury in the panic, but the net never forgets. And somewhere in the mess, one thing stood out. We got a ping, a reverse trace from the hijack signal, not just a transmission, a location. They thought we couldn't track it, that we were too primitive to bounce it back. They were wrong. The coordinates pointed toward a system in the outer Perseus arm, far untouchable by old standards. But humans aren't just good at rage, we're good at building when we're pissed, in silence. Behind the curtain of failing nations, a new alliance formed, not political, not even military. It was something older, primal. We called it Project Vengeance. It wasn't born in a Pentagon. It was born in bunkers, labs, shipyards, carved into asteroids. The richest men in the world funded it. The smartest minds on Earth shaped it. Mercenaries, engineers, ex-soldiers, ex-cons, men who lost everything. They became its muscle. No flags, no diplomacy, just a singular goal: erase the ones who erased us. I signed up before the ink was dry. There was no boot camp, just brutal survival. Trials, half of us didn't make it past. The first month, they weeded out anyone who still clung to peace or mercy. What they needed were weapons and human skin. People who didn't care what it cost, who weren't trying to come back. Our ship wasn't beautiful, it didn't need to be. It was a carrier-class battleship, powered by black hole compression tech. We stole from alien ruins in the Arctic. Tech we didn't even fully understand. Just learned to point it the right way. We named it Ashbra because we weren't coming to fight, we were coming to a race. Ashbra didn't look like a ship. It looked like a grave, a floating tomb of fire and fury forged from stolen alien tech and Earth's last desperation. Its outer hull was jagged, unfinished, scorched by constant retrofitting. No smooth lines, no elegance. It was ugly, deliberately, a predator that didn't care how it looked, only that it killed, and inside we weren't a crew. We were a pack, no salutes, no ranks. Everyone aboard had bled somewhere. Everyone had a name written on the walls. Of the dead, mine was Eric Brandt. I didn't expect to survive training. I didn't even care if I did, but something inside me wouldn't die. Something stubborn, feral. It kept whispering, you don't stop until they burn. We didn't know who they were yet, but we had a name now, not one we understood. The symbol from the broadcast translated crudely into syllables, Corey. Their empire spanned hundreds of systems. According to what little recon drones brought back, a spread of cold, emotionless precision, no art, no culture, no waste, just one purpose. Control, and when something couldn't be controlled, they erased it like Earth. The problem was, humans never needed control to survive. We thrived in chaos. We lived in pain. We didn't clean the blood from our teeth when we fought. We swallowed it and kept swinging. That's what the Korari never understood. You don't scare a species that's crawled through its own hell for millennia. You just make it angry. Ashbra held just under 100 of us, no politicians, no diplomats, just killers. The training burned out whatever softness we had left. Food was protein gel and recycled matter. Sleep came in 1-hour shifts. Combat drills ran 23 hours a day. The 1 hour off was used for silence, not rest, just silence. You sat with your ghosts in that hour. You stared at the burn marks on your bunk. You remembered why you were here. The man who ran our ops was named Ward. No first name, no title, just Ward. He was in his 50s, looked older, lean. Frame, sunken eyes, metal spine. Rumor was he'd survived the Sydney blast by crawling out of a half-melted building with one arm and a broken leg, carrying 2 dead children over his shoulder. No one asked if they were his. He stood in front of us during mission briefings, like a preacher in a church of violence. This isn't a raid, he told us once. This isn't revenge, it's a message. You're not soldiers, you're the bullet Earth loaded into the barrel of extinction. We're going to put a hole in their gods. The room never clapped, never cheered, just nodded. The texts back home were still feeding us data as Ashbra closed the gap to the Korari fringe worlds. Every hyperskip brought us closer. Every jump deeper into uncharted territory. The ship creaked when it bent. Space, you could feel it in your teeth. Like something primal wanted out. Our first target was a colony world, not a military base, a civilian processing hub. We had no guilt, not after what they did. They didn't kill our soldiers. They killed our children. They broadcasted it like it was entertainment. they forfeited mercy the second they chose to make it a show. Ashbur dropped out of slip space above. A planet we couldn't even pronounce. It was massive, blue rings, green oceans. Towers like ivory knives stabbing up into the clouds. It should have been beautiful. Ward gave the order, no survivors. We launched. I was part of the ground breach team, 5 of us in black drop. Armor fully sealed, guns that fired molten rounds capable of tearing through. 10 in of Korari plate, no comms except for direct link. If you got shot, you either got up or died. No medics, no evac. The descent felt slow. My heart wasn't racing, it was waiting, cold, focused. The moment we hit the atmosphere, we saw them. Korari defense. Flyers scrambling to respond. They didn't expect us this deep. Their reaction time was delayed. That was enough. Ashbur's orbital cannons opened fire. Chunks of white-hot plasma lit up the sky like artificial suns. The towers exploded before the Korari could even launch a full counter. I watched as alien bodies, long, sleek, four-armed things with dead gray skin, flew into the air from the blast wave. No screams. They didn't scream, they just died. Quietly, cowards. We landed in the middle of what used to be a city square. Their buildings were glass and stone, no signs of life. Automated, no children, no elderly. It was clinical, like a spreadsheet, pretending to be civilization. We moved through it like wolves, room by room, corridor by corridor. We found their data cores, ripped them out, downloaded everything. We didn't understand half the code, but we sent it up anyway. Let the eggheads back home figure it out. Our job wasn't to learn, it was to erase. They started resisting after 20 minutes. Squads of Korari warriors, thin but tall, with armor that pulsed when hit. They moved fast, thought faster, but we didn't think, we just reacted. I killed 7 in the first wave. My rifle overheated, switched to blades. You haven't lived until you've buried steel in something that isn't supposed to bleed but does. Their blood was clear like antifreeze. It steamed when it hit the ground. I got hit once. Shoulder, armor absorbed most of it, but the shock nearly knocked me cold. I kept moving. One of my brothers went down. Clean, ex-Marine big guy, took a plasma round to the chest. He didn't scream, just looked at me and nodded once before. The second shot took his face. I didn't look back. We reached the central spire, a communication hub. Ward's voice came through the link. Detonated, full charge. We didn't question. The core went up with a fire that split the ground open. For miles, we left as the sky turned black with smoke. From orbit, Ashbur dropped a kinetic rod. Nothing explosive, just pure mass. At terminal velocity, when it hit, the planet cracked. Our first message was sent. 3 billion Korari dead. We didn't celebrate. There was no victory, just silence. Ward met us in the hangar. That's one, he said. 17 left. 17, that was the number of primary Korari colonies. Each one responsible, each one complicit. Every drone recon returned the same thing. No mourning, no reaction. They didn't care. To them this was containment. They still thought we were manageable. They thought wrong. Back in quarters, I took out the last picture I had of my son, worn, cracked. The colors had faded. He was 5. Missing a front tooth, smiling like the world was too big to fear. I stared at that photo for an hour. Then I went to the armory. I started modifying my Rifle, longer barrel, custom grip. Increased voltage on the charge coils. If they wanted to pretend we were still the prey, I'd make sure they felt every second of the truth. The next target was 2 jumps away, a military world. They would be ready. Good, so were we. We were 2 jumps out when we received the broadcast. It wasn't from Earth. It wasn't from any human channel. This was Cori Tech, high-frequency pulse encrypted in a format we couldn't fully crack, but part of it had been adapted by our AI systems after the first colony slaughter. It auto-translated what it could. Human aggression recorded. Containment protocol initiated. Prepare for sterilization. Ward stared at it on the main screen, hands clasped behind his back. They're going to war, someone muttered behind me. Ward didn't flinch. He just said, good. Ashbra was still burning off heat from the last drop. Engineers patched hole breaches, repainted torn plating, and recalibrated the forward cannons. We didn't dock, we didn't rest. There were no ports to return to, no home planet to resupply from. Earth had become a command center for Ashes, funneling resources into our ship, our crew, our mission, as if vengeance had replaced survival as the primary instinct of the species. And maybe it had. Every night I saw them, the dead, not in dreams. I didn't sleep long enough for those just faces flickering in my mind like phantom burns. My wife's eyes just before I left for work, my son's laugh. It never stayed long, just enough to keep the rage sharp, enough to remind me why we were out here lighting entire civilizations on fire. We weren't the villains, we were what happened when villains went too far. The next target was Invar Prime, one of their oldest military colonies, a world-sized fortress, rings of satellites, ground-based artillery, and an orbital fleet that dwarfed anything we'd seen before. A full garrison of elite Korari war forms. They were waiting for us. We knew it would be a bloodbath. Didn't matter. Ward laid out the mission with deadpan precision. We're not taking it, we're not liberating it, we're not even disabling it, we're going to turn it into a warning the galaxy never forgets. There was no drop this time, no stealth, no surprise. Ashbra came in loud. We exited slip space right outside the defensive perimeter. Their fleet moved instantly. 36 cruisers, 17 destroyers, hundreds of drone fighters swarming like hornets. They opened fire before we could fully realign from the jump. Our shields dropped to 70% in the first 10 seconds. No panic, we'd planned for this. Ashbra didn't have a cloaking system, didn't need one. It had Thresher cannons, Earth's latest hell creation, fusion magnetic slings that launched depleted uranium rods at a quarter the speed of light. No energy signature, just mass. Pure, brutal old-school physics. First volley tore through the enemy fleet like a spear through wet paper. 3 Korari ships vaporized before they even understood what hit them. The rest scattered. Then came the lurkers. These weren't part of Ashbra's blueprints. They were last-minute additions, remote piloted war barges built from scrap in AI brains tortured into obedience. Suicide drones the size of submarines, packed with antimatter cores. We released 20. They screamed through space, bypassing shields, worming between enemy formations, then exploded. With the force of small stars, half the orbital defense was gone in under 5 minutes, but they adapted quickly. Korari ships were designed for modular evolution. I watched through the viewing deck as Some of them morphed mid-fight plates. Shifting, engines rerouting weapons. Folding in and out like insects, they started flanking us, their drones. Swarmed like mist, tearing into our hull. With razor limbs and plasma bites. Ashbra bled fire, inside alarms. Screamed bulkhead sealed, hull. Ruptures in sectors 7 through 11, 15 of our crew were lost in the first breach. Another 10 burned alive trying to hold the reactor line. I saw one man get dragged through a gap into space before the emergency door slammed shut. No name, just a scream that cut off like a light switch. Ward's voice came through. Comms hard and cold. Breach squad. Launch, get inside the fortress. Set the charges. I was already halfway to the drop bay. Our goal wasn't to win the space fight. It was to make them bleed where it hurt. The command center on Invar's surface. The brains, the officers, the High Council of Military Operations. Intelligence said they were buried inside a mountain protected by layers of terrain, shielding, and biocurity. Good, we like to challenge. My squad consisted of 4 this time. Merrick, ex-miner turned demolitions. Griff, a quiet long-range specialist who hadn't spoken since we left Earth. Doyle, a brute with arms like pistons. And me, the one who never stopped. Getting back up, we punched through atmosphere at terminal velocity. Our pods were black metal coffins built to withstand hell. No guidance, no corrections. You either landed or splattered. We landed. Barely. I clawed my way out of the twisted wreck. Lungs burning, suit screaming, pressure warnings. The planet's gravity was heavier than Earth's. My limbs felt like concrete. The sky was a permanent eclipse, dark purple with electric clouds, and everything smelled sterile. Carate was everywhere. Drones swarmed overhead. Turrets lined the cliffs. Pulse scanners swept the terrain. We moved fast, low, silent predators. One by one we reached the base of the mountain. Griff took out a patrol with clean headshot from 300 m. Merrick laid charges along the outer gates. Doyle and I stormed the breach with suppressive fire. The enemy was fast, precise, but not creative, not savage. They calculated. We improvised. When we got inside, it was worse. The Cathari didn't decorate. Their walls were plain metal, smooth and sterile. Every hallway was a copy of the last, if not for our internal maps. We'd have been lost in seconds. We fought our way through 6 levels of defense, each one tighter than the last. Automated gun lines, pressure-sealed kill rooms, gas traps. Merrick died on the 4th level. Laser grid caught him mid-step. 1 second he was there. Next, just pieces. I saw part of his skull hit the wall and slide down, still smoking. No time to mourn. We pushed forward. Doyle went down near the inner chamber, took 3 plasma rounds to the chest before he even realized we were ambushed. Griff dragged him behind a blast shield, but he was already gone. No final words, just a low grunt, then silence. By the time we reached the command center, it was just me and Griff. The door was massive, 10 ft thick, lined with living metal that pulsed like veins. No keypad, no handle, just a smooth blank surface. We planted the charge, Merrick's last set, enough to level a small city block. We backed up, triggered the countdown. 10 seconds. I remember thinking about my son again. His voice, the way he used to yell "Dad" when I came home, like it was the best part of his day. The explosion shook the mountain. The door didn't just crack, it vaporized. Fire washed over us. I felt the suit buckle. The heat creep in, pain bloomed in my side, but I didn't stop moving. Inside. We saw them, Corey officers, not soldiers, not fighters. Planners, cowards, 7 of them huddled around a massive circular display. They turned slowly when we entered, no fear. Just confusion, as if they couldn't believe we'd made it. I shot the first one in the face. Griff opened fire on the others. They tried to run, too late. We didn't ask questions, we didn't need answers. We emptied every round we had into them. Then I activated the core overload. This base was their brain, the central node for fleet coordination, supply routes, and planetary defense. Destroying it wouldn't just an NBSP and NBSP. Envir, it would send the rest of the Korari Empire into disarray. I grabbed Griff by the arm. Time to go. He shook his head. A plasma bolt had hit his hip. He wouldn't make it out. He handed me the last data core torn from the command table. Get it home, he said, his first words in weeks. I nodded, then ran. The escape tunnel was collapsing behind me. Fire. Shrapnel sirens. I made it to the evac beacon, activated the emergency recall. Ashbra pulled me out with seconds to spare. From orbit I watched Invar burn. A mountain-sized explosion cracked the crust. The sky lit up red. Their fleet scattered, leaderless, directionless. Ward stared at the feed and spoke 4 words. Let the next one scream. It happened 3 days after Invar burned. We were still processing the data. Griff died to deliver. Our engineers, scientists, and analysts back home tore through the alien files with desperate intensity, and what they found wasn't just strategy or coordinates. It was fear buried deep in their encrypted systems. Was a file tagged in something close to emotion, rare for Korthari records. A label we hadn't seen before. Category: read hostile emergent. Us humans. They had no word for vengeance in their language, no concept of irrational retaliation. Their empires were built on sterile efficiency. When another species resisted, they didn't escalate. They contained, neutralized, erased. But with us, their containment had failed. Earth hadn't broken. We'd gotten meaner than they'd imagined possible. They didn't understand revenge, but they understood danger, and they responded the only way they knew how, with overkill. The Korthari fleet jumped into Earth's orbit at 4:20 UTC. We weren't there to see it. Ashbra was 2 systems away, mid-jump en route to another target, but we got the feed. Everyone did. Earth's orbital satellites went dark, then lit up again, not with a broadcast from the Korari this time, but with Earth's new voice to all surviving nations. This is unified command. Earth is under siege. Do not engage without directive. All defensive protocols are active. Operation Burnback is a go. We didn't panic. We smiled. They thought they were coming back to the same Earth they hit before. Civilian skyscrapers. Chaos. But that Earth died with the 7 million they burned. The new Earth was lean, hard, dug into the bones of its own planet like a creature ready to strike. They came expecting submission. What they got was fire. The first Korari assault wave didn't even make it through the atmosphere. Earth's planetary grid, an experimental defense mesh powered by kinetic satellite cannons, lit up like a war god waking from a long sleep. 3 enemy carriers disintegrated mid-entry. Another 7 were dragged into gravity wells and slammed into unmarked deserts, never to be found again. We watched it All from Ashbra, some of us shouted. Others just grinned, but me, I felt something else. Pride. Earth wasn't begging anymore. Earth was fighting back, but it wasn't over. The Korari landed troops, millions of them, not in the cities. They knew better. They aimed for critical infrastructure, military bunkers, power cores, and they landed hard. One of their primary strikes was aimed at Site Theta, an underground facility in Alaska, formerly NORAD. Now it housed Earth's AI core, the synthetic nerve center that ran all automated defenses and fleet logistics. If they took it, the whole planet would go dark. Ward didn't wait for command approval. He rerouted Ashbringer mid-jump, burned out 2 of our warp coils doing it, but we dropped out of slip space right above Alaska, barely avoiding slamming into the upper stratosphere. Ward's voice rang through the comms. They want Earth back. Let's show them what it costs. We dropped fast, no pods this time. Direct ground impact suits. Heavier, slower, but indestructible. My HUD came online mid-descent. 150,000 Korthari soldiers marked on the ground, massive crawlers like steel. Spiders rolled across the snow, plasma barges lit up the sky. I saw the crater where Site Theta used to be sealed. It was open now, burning, fractured under siege. I hit the ground like a meteor. The snow didn't even exist by the time I got up, just steam and blood. Korari troops flooded the ridge. They weren't like the ones we faced before. These were warriors, enhanced, armored, wired into a hive command net. They moved like one organism, no hesitation, no fear. I didn't care. My rifle barked. A dozen dropped. Behind me, dozens more of our breachers slammed into the ground. Ward's second in command, Kurtz, led a flank assault through the north corridor. Drones warred above us. Missile pods shrieked down. The ground shook like the planet was trying to eject the invaders by force, and still they kept coming. Inside the Site Theta breach, it was worse. The AI core had activated defensive protocols, automated turrets screamed with red fire. Tesla walls lit the tunnels, but the Korari had adapted again. Small units of nullface soldiers able to blink past physical matter were inside already. We had to clear it room by room. My team moved through the lower corridor. Doyle's old route, the same place we trained when Ashbra first launched. Now it was blackened and covered in alien ichor. We found the first control room swarmed. Half a dozen Korthari tore apart the wiring, looking for the neural link to disable our AI. I tore through them with my blades. Close quarters, visceral Korari bodies don't react like ours. No screams, no pleading, just collapse like turning off a machine. We reached the core chamber in 20 minutes. Too long. One of the null-phase bastards was already linked into the data port, flooding corrupted code into the system. The AI flickered, light stuttered. I raised my weapon, but Ward beat me to it. He'd come through the sidewall, coated in alien blood, limping but alive. He fired once, a spike round straight through the Korari's elongated skull. The thing spasmed, then exploded. We purged the corruption, rebooted the core. Earth came back online. Within seconds, orbital support kicked in. Satellites fired precision strikes. Drones dropped nukes targeted fast. Ruthless. Korari formations broke. Some tried to flee. We didn't let them. Ashbra hovered above the battlefield. Like death incarnate, its cannons roared. The sky turned red again. By Nightfall they were gone, every single one, ashes in the snow. Ward stood outside the ruins of sight. Theta as the wind blew alien dust across the ice, he turned to me, voice. They brought the war back to Earth. I nodded. They thought we'd still be on our knees. He looked up at the stars. Now they know we're on our feet. I didn't respond. I didn't have to, because I knew what came next. We weren't just going to burn their colonies. We were going to hunt their home world. They called it Zalvir, the Korari home world, the source, the seat of their empire, the origin of every fleet, every war form, every broadcast that turned Earth into a mass grave. According to the data Griff died for, Zalvir wasn't just another planet. It was their cradle and their crown, a world wrapped in fortress moons with deep orbit kinetic cannons that could gut a supercarrier in seconds. Their AI cores were rooted into the planet's crust. Their leaders weren't elected, born, or chosen. They were grown, cloned thought leaders, emotionless strategists who hadn't felt fear in thousands of years. That was about to change. Ward stood at the command bay of Ashbringer, his eyes red, voice low. We go to Zevir. No diplomacy, no warnings, no survivors. No one argued. We just buried another 20 of our own. Half the engineers who kept Ashbringer running were dead from the battle at Site Theta. Half the rest hadn't spoken since. I saw a comm in the mesh hall, staring at a bloodstained badge for 3 hours without blinking. That's what the war did. It didn't always kill the body, just whatever was left behind. I wasn't spared from it either. Every night I saw Merrick explode again. Doyle's body slumped under alien fire. Griff handing me that Dakor, bleeding out with a whisper. My wife's face, my son's laughter, but I welcomed the pain. Pain meant I was still human. Pain meant I had something left to destroy. We spent 2 weeks prepping Ashbringer for the final assault. She'd been patched so many times she barely resembled the original model. Reinforced bow, new reactor core, modified rail cannons, capable of firing asteroids harvested from the Kuiper belt at half-life speed. Each one carried a name engraved in steel, names of the lost. Mine was carved into the biggest one, Lucas Brant, my son. 2 jumps to reach the edge of the Korari central system, 1 more to breach their home world's outer defense ring. The AI on board told us we had a 7% survival rate. None of us flinched. We weren't here to survive. We were here to finish it. The first jump was smooth. No interference, no patrols. Just empty space between dead systems we'd already glassed. The second jump, less kind. We exited slip space in the middle of a collapsed trade route. Debris fields miles wide, Korari cargo vessels half vaporized. Some from us, some maybe from internal conflict. Their empire was fraying at the edges. We stopped for 1 hour to harvest what we could. Inside the remains of a battleship, I found a Korari corpse, slumped in its chair, its face frozen in what I could only describe as confusion, like it died without understanding how. That gave me a twisted kind of satisfaction. They'd killed billions. They thought themselves gods, but gods don't die with blank stares and holes in their skulls. Our third jump brought us into hell. The instant we exited, Ashbur was hit by 5 separate rail burst. Shields buckled. 3 decks vented atmosphere. Dozens dead in the first minute, but the bridge held. Ward didn't scream, didn't panic. He just pointed at the star map and said, straight through, all weapons hot. Xavier hung in the center of the system. Like a black pearl, no clouds, no ocean. Just stone, metal, and light. From orbit, it looked like a wasp hive. Towers, domes, tens of thousands of. Defense turrets spinning like eyes. Rings of stations orbiting at intervals. Each with weapons we couldn't even identify. Moons split open to reveal. Carriers the size of cities, we didn't slow down. Ashbringer roared, our forward cannons fired everything, kinetic rods screamed. Into space, breaking through their outer fleet, we launched lurkers, 50 of them. This time, suicide crafts that blitzed past shields and detonated inside their own hangars. The Korari tried to counter, their defense AI activated, but Ashbra had evolved too. We'd uploaded a virus into their network weeks ago. One of Griff's last gifts. It was designed not to crash their systems, but to delay just enough, seconds maybe. But in war, seconds win battles. Our boarding squads launched. My team went with the first wave. This was it. No fallback, no second chances. We were on course to breach Xaver's surface and take the war to the source. We hit atmosphere like meteors. Their world was colder than expected, dead. Wind, no sky, just a constant burn of artificial light from towers that stretched into orbit. No trees, no grass, no wildlife, just engineered perfection. And now boots on the ground. Korari warforms met us immediately. Massive ones, 10 feet tall with armor so thick our rounds bounced off unless you hit the gaps. They didn't talk, didn't scream, just charged. One of them crushed a soldier next to me. With a single blow, I watched his spine snap backward. I put a blade through its eye. We kept moving. Ashbringer stayed above, absorbing fire from every direction. She was bleeding, smoke trailing from her midsection, engines damaged but still firing, a lion surrounded by hyenas. Ward's voice rang in my ear. Main target is Central Mine Spire. Cut it down. Everything else dies with it. Easier said than done. The spire was over 5 km tall, heavily shielded, protected by 30 layers of defense, and worse, they were adapting again. We watched in horror as wounded Korari began fusing with nearby tech, literally merging with machines. Their flesh became wires, their limbs turned into weapons. They stopped acting like individuals and started forming hives. Collective bodies moving as one. Griff would have called it fascinating. I called it disgusting. We didn't stop. We used thermite charges to cut through sealed doors, plasma cutters to melt defenses. I lost 2 more from my squad before we even reached the inner city. One was torn in half. The other got swarmed by nano drones and dissolved before we could pull her out. By the time we reached the spire, I was limping. My left shoulder was numb. Blood leaked into my suit. Didn't matter, I wasn't leaving. The door to the spire was sealed with some kind of living code. Wall of energy that scanned you as you approached. It rejected us instantly. Ward himself appeared moments later, flanked by heavy gunners and a portable nuke the size of a coffin. He looked at me. You still standing? Barely. He smiled, the first time I'd ever seen it. Good, help me carry this thing inside. We detonated the door with the nuke. Didn't even wait for the smoke to clear. Inside it wasn't metal, it was organic. The walls pulsed. Lights moved like blood vessels. The air felt wet, alive, and in the center the Korari high mind, not a person, not even a being. It was a mass, a pulsating Things suspended in fluid connected by wires and thoughts. We couldn't tell where it began or ended. It felt wrong. Like staring at the end of everything. Human. Ward raised his weapon. I beat him too. I fired one shot right into the heart of it. The entire planet screamed. Not with sound but with data, a psychic pulse. My vision blurred, my head felt like it was splitting open, all around us. Corari dropped, some folded, some exploded, others just froze, like the signal that kept them moving had been cut. Ward looked at me, eyes wide. You killed it. I dropped the gun. No, we did. Aspra began its retreat. We'd done it. We'd broken their mind, their world, their empire, and for the first time since the first broadcast, Earth was safe. We thought it was over. After Xavier fell, we pulled back, not because we had to, but because there was nothing left to kill. The Corari didn't surrender. They didn't plead. When their mind collapsed, they just shut down. Like someone flipped the off switch on an entire species. Their fleets went dead. Their drones dropped out of the sky. Their warforms collapsed mid-chart, limbs twitching before going limp. Victory, right? That's what they called it back home. Every news feed on Earth blasted the same message. Humanity triumphant. The war is over. Families cheered in what was left of the cities. Survivors poured into the streets with makeshift flags, names of the fallen scrolled across digital walls while children danced beneath them. For the first time in years, people looked up, not out of fear but hope. But me, I didn't celebrate because I felt it. Even as we boarded Aspra for the final departure, even as we drifted past the smoldering wreckage of Corthary moons and orbiting spires, I felt it. Wrongness in the air. Not grief, not guilt, a silence too loud to ignore. Ward must have sensed it too. He didn't say anything, but the way he stood on the bridge, motionless, jaw locked, told me his instincts were screaming. He was a man who had seen too much war to ever believe it ends clean. He was right. It started the moment we jumped out of the system. Ashbringer's core upgraded with scavenge. Corthari tech flickered mid jump, just a stutter, a hiccup. Then the lights dimmed. Systems reset. Communications dropped to static for 20 seconds. But in that static, we heard something. Not a glitch, not a signal, a voice. It didn't speak in words, not like we understand them. It pulsed, echoed, bypassed our comms and went straight into our heads. It wasn't language, it was presence. Something vast, ancient. Pressure behind your eyes. Every man on the bridge froze. I felt my hands go cold, my vision blurred. The voice whispered, not with sound but certainty, you were not meant to find it. Then everything snapped back. Power returned, systems normalized, navigation confirmed our coordinates. We were back in Sol, Earth ahead, Aspra trailing. Scars and silence, but that message, it haunted us. Ward called an emergency meeting. Only 10 of us left from the original breach team, blooded, broken, but still breathing. We met in the tactical chamber, surrounded by hollow feeds showing Earth cities rebuilding. The footage felt fake, like an old film loop. Ward stood in front of us, eyes darker than I'd ever seen. We didn't just kill the Cthari, he said quietly. We woke something they were afraid of. Griff, if he were alive, would have jumped on that theory. He once said, no empire lasts forever unless it's hiding from something bigger. Maybe the Cthari weren't conquerors, maybe they were survivors. following some ancient protocol, kill all emergent threats before they trigger whatever was beneath. We triggered it. Ward pulled up footage from Ashbringer's internal systems, logs, from the moment we shot the High Mind. In the background of the audio, under the roar of the explosion and screaming data feeds, was a sound none of us had heard before, a heartbeat, slow, deep. Not from any human or Korthari source. It didn't match known life forms, didn't match machines either. It was below the detection line of all standard scanners. Something had been sleeping beneath Zelvier, and when we destroyed the High Mind, we cracked the shell. Earth's victory wasn't the end, it was the beginning. We stayed in orbit for another 48 hours, silent, watching Earth signals, monitoring deep space. At first, everything seemed fine until the stars started vanishing. At 0200 hours, Sector Command on Earth sent out a Level 9 distress call. Astronomical event unidentified. Occlusion patterns detected in outer rim systems. Translation: stars, entire constellations were disappearing from the sky. At first, they blamed equipment, then software, then space debris, but we knew better. Ward ordered Ashbra back into deep space. We're not done, he said, not until we know what the hell we let out. I volunteered first. I couldn't go back to Earth. There was no home waiting for me. My family was still ash on a long-forgotten timestamp. I had no place in the celebrations. I only belonged in the fire. The crew was smaller now. Maybe 40 of us, half engineers, the rest warriors, all of us volunteers. No orders from Earth, no backup, just a broken ship and the knowledge that something ancient now knew we existed. We jumped back toward the Korari system. But it wasn't there. Zelvier was gone, not destroyed, gone. No debris, no signals. No gravity distortion, just empty space. Where an entire world used to be, and around it silence, not the silence of peace, the silence of breath held before a scream. Our AI tried pinging the last known Korari colonies, nothing. Tried relaying back to Earth, no response. Then the stars started moving. I watched from the command deck as one of the distant stars on our chart shifted, not just drifted, moved deliberately, like something massive and alive was turning. Another one blinked out, then two more. Ward stood next to me, voice low. We didn't end the war, he whispered. We kicked open a cell. I felt it in my bones. The Korari hadn't built a home world on Zelvier because it was sacred. They built it as a prison gate. The Hyman wasn't just a strategist, it was a seal, a conscious lock, a worked neural firewall designed not just to run an empire, but to contain something beneath it. And we blew it to hell. Now that thing was free. What came next was fast, too fast. The thing we awakened, we never saw its full form, but its presence was like standing too close to a black hole, like the air was thinning, like space itself was watching. Our system started failing, weapons locked up, lights dimmed. The AI went offline and came back gibbering in dead languages. Then the voice returned, this time clearer. Not words, ideas. This cycle is broken. You are not the first. You will not be the last. Ward tried to order a jump, too late. From the dark it came, not a ship, not a creature, a shape, like a wound in reality itself, a crack in the rules we thought governed the universe. And from that wound arms reached out, not physical, not entirely, like shadows pretending to be solid. They touched the Outer hull, Ashbra groaned like a dying animal. Deck plates buckled, men screamed, we fired everything. Rods, missiles, fusion cores, nothing mattered. It didn't bleed, it didn't even react. Then, as if bored, it receded, not because we won, because it lost interest, like it had just been sniffing us, testing, sampling, and what it tasted didn't scare it, it just whispered one last phrase as it vanished back into the black. Not ready yet, but soon. Ashbra drifted for days, systems rebooted slowly, comms returned. Partially, Earth was still there, still rebuilding, but strange reports had begun, people going missing, whole research outposts on Mars suddenly silent, AI systems refusing orders, satellites blinking out in perfect geometric patterns. We didn't go home. We couldn't. Ward sent one final encrypted message to Earth. Victory was a lie, prepare. The old things are waking up. Then we turned Ashbringer toward deep space to find out what came before the Korari, to find the thing they tried to cage, to understand the thing that now knew our name. We weren't soldiers anymore. We were the last line between humanity and whatever waited behind the stars. And I swear to you, it's still watching. We left known space behind, past the edge of Korari systems, beyond what even alien charts had mapped. Out here, stars were sparse, time felt warped. Ashbra moved like it was cutting through oil, heavy, slow, with the sense that something was pressing back. Ward called it the event horizon of reason. We'd stopped trying to explain it. Every day that passed, we felt less like soldiers and more like explorers of a place no mind was meant to wander. The ship groaned when we moved too fast. Lights dimmed even when power was full. Our internal clocks lost sync. People began hearing things through the vents, whispers, footsteps, breathing that didn't match the crew count. We should have turned back, but we couldn't. The entity we'd awakened beneath Zalvier, we didn't even have a name for it. It didn't give one. It didn't need to. It wasn't a god. It wasn't even evil in the way we understood it. It was just old, older than light, older than death. And it was curious. It had let us live, which meant it wanted something, and Ashbra was going to find out what. We followed the signal trace embedded in its last psychic pulse. Our tech couldn't track it, but the AI, what was left of it, had adapted. It had started dreaming, and in those dreams it saw coordinates, not ones that made sense in any star chart, but organic gravitational pulses, the language of black holes, of neutron stars, of ancient objects speaking in silence. We followed it into a void pocket, no stars, no planets, just a massive empty sphere stretching for light years until we reached its center. There was a monolith floating, impossible in scale, like a knife plunged through reality, blacker than space, taller than anything we'd ever seen. No lights, no markings, no obvious function. But the moment we approached, it woke. Ashbra systems died instantly. Total blackout. Then came the voice, not in our ears, not in the comms, inside our minds. You were not first, but you may be last. We fell unconscious, all of us. 1 second I was standing on the bridge, weapon in hand. The next I was somewhere else. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't a vision. It was a memory. I stood on a battlefield that wasn't Earth. Red skies, towers split down the middle, corpses that weren't human or Korari, creatures 10 stories tall, all bone and steel, lying broken under bloodless moons. Ships the size of Continents shattered in orbit, the air stank of burnt ozone and rotting intelligence. And in the center, the entity, it wasn't a shape, it wasn't even form, it was absence, a wound in space, the same one we'd glimpsed after killing the high mind, except this was billions of years ago. It wasn't fighting, it was feeding. Feeding on thought, on memory, on identity, the species that tried to stop. It had power far beyond ours, weapons that bent time, shields that could deflect suns, civilizations with trillions of minds linked together. None of it mattered. They'd built the monolith to stop it, a cage of logic, a prison made of collective belief that, if enough minds agreed it could not pass, it would stay locked forever, and for a time it worked. But empires fall and belief decays. I woke up gasping, soaked in sweat, blood trickling from my nose. Ashbringer was still dark around me. The rest of the crew writhed in their own hallucinations, dreams, nightmares, memories that weren't ours. The monolith had shown us what came before, and it wanted to know if we were worthy to come after. Ward came to a few minutes later. Eyes bloodshot, skin pale. He said one sentence before collapsing again. We're the Phalaph. I didn't understand it then, but I would. Because that's when the test began. The monolith sent down a signal, not a weapon, a challenge, a trial in 3 parts: physical, mental, and existential. Not tests of strength, not even survival, tests of will. The first came without warning. The crew turned on each other, not manipulated, not mind controlled, just poisoned with doubt. One by one, men who'd bled beside me for years started to question. Their memories were twisted, voices whispered doubts. You didn't lose your family, you killed them. The war wasn't real, you invented it to feel alive. There is no Earth, there never was. Reality bent like a fragile mirror. Some cracked. Benson, our pilot, slit his own throat with a shard of broken armor. Yin, the comm specialist, spaced herself mid-hallucination. She thought we were still on Zalvir, screamed that the walls were bleeding. Only 20 of us remained after the first phase. I almost broke too. I started doubting my son's name, but I had one anchor left. The pain, the image of his last recorded position, the time stamp, the silence that followed. Pain didn't lie, and so I held on. Second test came silently. We found a chamber deep in Aspra's lower decks that hadn't existed before, a door cold, made of the same black material as the monolith. We opened it. Inside were replicas of each of us standing, breathing, watching, perfect copies. They didn't speak, didn't move until we did. Then they attacked, not with rage, not even violence. They whispered truths we'd buried, each word a scalpel. Mine looked me in the eye and said, you didn't fight for revenge, you fought because you missed killing, because war gave you purpose. Without it, you're nothing. I almost believed him. Then I broke his neck. The room burned with light. 17 of us made it out. Then came the final test, existential. The monolith offered us peace. It spoke through our dead. I saw my son again. His real voice, his real face. He stood in the command bay, holding my hand, asking me to stay. I missed you, Dad. You don't have to fight anymore. The others saw their own ghosts, wives, brothers, children, all saying the same thing. Give up, rest. Let it end. It was beautiful, peaceful, warm. That's how it works. That's why the old ones lost, because in the end, When offered eternal peace, they chose sleep over war, but we didn't. We are human. We scream in the dark. We fight with broken bones. We bite down on blood and keep moving forward. Ward stood at the edge of the illusion and roared, "We don't rest." And with that, the monolith shattered, not physically, it collapsed. Within us, its test failed. We were not perfect, we were not pure, but we were refusers, and that was enough. When we awoke again, Ashbra's systems were back online. No voices, no whispers, just silence. The monolith drifted behind us, still dim, empty, and then came the final message. Cycle broken, not caged, not fed, not feared. Observation begins. Whatever it wasn't sealed anymore. But it didn't destroy us, because for the first time it had seen something different. Not obedience, not worship, not panic, defiance. It wasn't over, but it was watching, waiting. And as Ashbra turned back towards Sue, I knew one thing: humanity's greatest weapon wasn't our technology or our rage. It was the fact that we never give up. The sky was too blue. That's what struck me first when we re-entered Earth's orbit. After everything we'd seen, burning stars, frozen voids, monoliths that whispered in thought, Earth's sky felt wrong, too clean, too untouched, like the world below had moved on without remembering what it cost. Ashbra was barely holding together. She creaked on entry, panels scorched. One of her rail cannons fused into dead metal. Only 15 of us were left. 15 out of almost 200. We carried no trophies, no celebration, just scars, silence, and the memory of something that had let us go. For now, we weren't welcomed back with parades. There were no crowds waiting on the tarmac, only two officials, eyes dull, suits too clean, and a security team that kept their distance like we were radioactive. Maybe we were. Ward met with them briefly. I didn't hear the words, didn't need to. Their body language told the story. They received our message, the raw data, the final recordings. They knew, but they didn't understand. Back in the cities, life continued like the war had ended. Billboards played ads for new colonies, luxury space cruisers. Schools opened, families rebuilt. Politicians smiled on podiums. Victory speeches aired on loop, laced with slogans like Earth Reborn, peace through strength, the age of unity. But it was all a mask, because under the surface, behind the smiles, people were scared. They'd seen the stars go out. They'd felt the tremors in their sleep. Children drew pictures of black towers with no doors. AI cores refused to access Korari systems. Some even locked themselves down, citing paradox loop errors. High orbit stations went dark for minutes at a time. Astronomers began reporting impossible gravitational anomalies. Entire dwarf galaxies had gone missing. From the deep scans, something had changed. We had changed. The debrief took 9 days. They interrogated us like war criminals, not with anger but with fear. The way scientists prod a ticking bomb. They don't understand. They wanted to know everything. What was the monolith? Was it alive? Could it follow us back? Could it be reasoned with? What did it want? We gave them one answer: it doesn't want. It watches. That wasn't good enough. They wanted data, coordinates, weaknesses, tactics. Ward told them the truth: if it decides to end us, it won't be a war, it'll be a blink. And still they planned. That's what humans do. They build, they prepare, they pretend they have time. They offered us medals. Some accepted, most of us didn't. You Don't take medals for waking a god and surviving its curiosity. I returned to Nairobi, what was left of it, rebuilt streets, clean buildings, green zones, kids playing, fountains. I stood in the same spot my son had died. The GPS ping had been archived, burned into Earth's war record. Under Incident 1 Alpha, a tree grew there. Now I knelt beside it, put my hand on the soil, didn't cry, didn't speak, just stayed there until the sun dipped below the skyline. Ward disappeared 3 days later, no farewell, no transmission, just gone. His ship, Burnlight, departed without a flight plan. Some say he's searching for another monolith, others say he never left that void, and we've just been talking to a ghost. Maybe he knew we were being watched, maybe he wanted to look the watcher in the eye again. Me, I stayed for a time. I tried to live, tried to eat normal food, sleep in a real bed, talk like a human again, but it never felt real, because the truth is we're not done. Not me, not Earth, not the thing behind the stars. 6 months passed. That's when the first beacon activated, deep under the Pacific, buried beneath tectonic plates. Untouched for millennia, Earth sensors lit up with a pulse. It wasn't Corey tech, it wasn't human. It matched 94% with the monolith's energy signature. I was called in immediately. The briefing room was full of new faces, young men in clean uniforms, bright eyes, thinking they were about to become heroes. They'd never heard the heartbeat. I told them what I saw, what I remembered, how the monolith tested us, not to destroy us, but to measure us, and now it was measuring Earth again. We weren't the only ones who had awakened. The beacon was one of 7, each buried deep in a planet across the system. We'd only found one. The others were silent for now. There was one last entry in the Ashbra log, something we'd missed during our jump back from the void. A passive sensor had picked up a message on a subdimensional layer, a whisper, translated crudely by our AI, 6 words. Next time, bring all of you. It wasn't a threat, it was an invitation. Earth is rebuilding fleets again, not for war against aliens, but for what comes next. They're calling them the Sentinel class. Ships built not to destroy, but to stand, to watch, to be the first line between humanity and the dark beyond. They asked me to name the first one. I called it Ashbringer too, not because we wanted war, but because some names should be remembered when the stars start to go out again. I don't know when it'll return, might be years, might be tomorrow, but it will, and when it does, we'll be ready. Not because we're powerful, not because we're united, but because we're human. We don't bow, we don't beg, we fight. Even when we know we're going to lose. Even when death stands inches from our face, we fight, because something worse than extinction is never having tried. And if that thing behind the stars wants to judge us again, let it come, let it see what Earth becomes when it refuses to die.